If you want to start eating healthier but aren't really sure what to do or how to stick with it or what's actually important, then this is the video for you. Make sure to stick around until the end because the last tip is the most important one. Hi and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Brianna and around here we chat everything wellness, personal growth, and closing the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. So if that is something you are looking to do this year, then you should subscribe and stick around. If you are looking to start eating healthier, I am so excited for you because eating healthy comes with so many positive changes and likely will impact you in ways that you never even would have thought of. I grew up eating mostly junk food and for a while was such a foodie that the idea of healthy eating was just so sad to me. But now I am someone who absolutely loves eating healthy and wouldn't really have it any other way. I never saw that coming, but here we are. And just to preface before getting into the tips I have for you in this video, I think one of the most important things if you are wanting to eat healthier and change your eating habits is to see it as a form of nourishing yourself, of loving yourself, of respecting yourself, instead of it being a negative thing of restricting yourself or it being disciplined because you feel like you need to change how you look or lose weight. It's fine to want those things, but it is so different when you come from a loving place versus a place of not feeling good enough or feeling like you want to change your eating habits just because it's what you should do. So just keeping that in mind, let's get into it. Nutrition can feel like a lot. There are so many diets out there and there are so many people on the internet saying you need to do this, you shouldn't do that, you have to do this instead. And it can very easily get very complicated and very overwhelming. And the issue with that is when things feel complicated, when they feel overwhelming, we are far less likely to actually, do anything about it, to stick with it. But at the end of the day, there are very specific things that nearly all diets agree on, and there's a foundation of what really matters. Everything else is just noise or splitting hairs and don't really matter if you don't have those foundational pieces in place. So while it can be very confusing and there is so much conflicting information out there, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to just keep it simple and just focus on the foundational pieces. And if at any time you feel like things are getting really complicated, just pause and ask yourself, how can I make this simpler? How can I let this be simpler? So let's talk about those foundational pieces. The first one is eating whole, nutrient-dense foods. And these are foods that are single ingredient from the earth. So things that have grown on the earth, things that have lived on the earth. We are talking fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, any animal products, grains, seafood, herbs. And it's not at all about eating perfectly clean, but making a majority of what you eat be these types of foods. These foods are nourishing. They're supporting your body. They're helping your body function optimally, and they help you feel so much better than if you're eating mostly foods that are completely void of nutrients. And these foods will help you feel more satisfied and full longer. So it's a great way to eat according to your true appetite, whereas it is so easy to overconsume more processed foods like chips. So instead of being focused on maybe what you need to cut out, I suggest focusing on how you can include more of these types of foods into what you're already eating. The next big foundational piece is eating meals in a balanced way, and that essentially means eating meals that have a balance of protein, fat, and carb, and even more ideally, a source of fiber. To keep this fairly simple, you want to have a pretty balanced ratio of all the foods on your plate and make sure that you have a good source of protein on your plate, as well as hopefully some type of fruit or veggie. So for example, instead of having this huge plate of pasta and butter and sauce, you would have this plate that had a serving or so of chicken with a smaller portion of the pasta and butter and sauce, and then a vegetable mixed in there in some way. And in this day and age, there are so many resources online, so you can easily go to Google or Pinterest or ChatGPT and just look up balanced meal examples and you'll find a ton. You don't necessarily have to eat the specific meals that you come across, but it will help give you a better idea of what it means to eat in a more balanced way. The next big foundational piece is eating it slowly and mindfully. A lot of us have cultivated the habit of eating super quickly for a number of reasons, but when we do so, we're not able to truly enjoy our food or be present with our food, and we can end up just shuffling food down our face and then not feel satisfied after because we weren't fully present with that experience. But when we eat slower and we're more present with our food, it allows more time to feel satisfied with what we ate, and it actually really helps our gut, as it helps our body break down the food better. Being mindful of what you're eating also includes making intentional decisions about what you're eating. So, for example, instead of going and grabbing food from the break room just because you know it's there, you actually pause and ask yourself, is that something I actually want? Does that sound really good to me right now? Am I actually hungry? Instead of just going and grabbing it because you know it's there. It also includes being mindful of how you feel. So start practicing just paying attention to how your body feels, and practice eating when you're actually hungry and stopping when you're satisfied instead of when you're just incredibly full. Those are the big foundational pieces, but a quick note that I want to make is that we are all so different. We have bio-individuality, so things are going to affect us differently. What maybe works really well for your friend in terms of how she feels and her health may be so different from what works best for your body. So included in that mindful piece, just pay attention to how you feel after your meals. What foods actually help you feel really good versus what foods don't make you feel so good. So then let's get into what will actually help you make these changes. The first tip here is you want to actually enjoy your food. Somewhere along the way, healthy food got wrapped up and associated with being bland and boring and not tasting very good, and you kind of just have to force yourself to eat it, which is so unfortunate. Eating healthy should still be an incredibly enjoyable experience. It should still taste good. You should still enjoy it. So for you, this may require just experimenting with foods and trying out, okay, what kind of foods do I actually really enjoy? Maybe what kind of combo of foods do you really enjoy? It may also require learning how to cook and making sure that even if it's healthy foods and healthy meals, you are still cooking with butters and oils and seasoning and herbs. Eating whole, nutrient-dense, healthy meals should still taste very good. For example, my friends and I have talked about how we grew up hating vegetables, but ultimately realized that was just how they were prepared, because once we learned how to cook better and prepare vegetables in the way that we really like, now we think they're delicious. And along with that, allow yourself to just open up your mind about maybe what you might like right now that you didn't in the past. And also just know that your palate and your taste buds can change. So over time, as you start including more of these types of foods, as you start to eat healthier, you can have a higher desire for and liking for these healthier foods. The next tip is planning ahead. Planning ahead can be so helpful. Taking a few minutes each week to actually think about what kind of meals that you want this week, what food you need, and making sure you go to the grocery store and get enough food can make such a difference. Because when we end up not really having a plan or not having enough food, then we're going to be so much more likely to lean into convenient options, or getting to a place where we don't really feel like cooking, so we get takeout, or getting so hungry that we're just like, okay, you know what? I need food now. There are so many ways to go about planning out meals or food prepping. There's not really a right or wrong, but you at least want to have an idea of the food that you want to get and make sure you have enough, and maybe even knowing when you're going to be out for a long time and making sure you have a snack with you, just so you don't fall into those kinds of scenarios. The next tip is to gamify it. Gamifying it can make it so much easier to stick with, at least initially. So for example, the personal training studio that I work out of a few years back did this January challenge that was called a Plant Point Challenge, where the goal was to eat as many plant-based foods in a day as you could. But the idea was to get more plant-based foods into your diet. We had a whole scoreboard and everything. And I have talked to a couple of my friends and a couple of my clients who eat really well and did not used to. And I've asked them, what helped you make that change? And multiple people have referenced that Plant Point Challenge, saying that got them to completely change their eating habits. They only did the actual challenge where they were keeping up with the number and their score for a month, but they've kept up with it for years. So play around with how you can make healthy eating more fun, how you can make a game out of it in some way. The next tip is you could try making small, sustainable changes, as the advice often goes, or you can try making bigger changes What really matters is that you allow for some flexibility. The typical advice is to make very small changes, taking things one step at a time. And I totally get that, and I do agree with it because oftentimes people try to do a complete 180 and make these massive changes and overhaul their lifestyle or their diet, and then they end up feeling overwhelmed, or it was too big of a change and their system gets frazzled and is like, okay, we're just gonna go back to our old ways. But I honestly don't think that you have to just focus on really small changes. Trying to completely overhaul your life may be a bit much, but I do think you can give yourself the option to make bigger changes with keeping in mind that, one, you are being honest with yourself. If you know that you tend to do better with things when you make smaller, sustainable changes, then that is going to probably be the most beneficial way for you to go. If you do want to make bigger changes and you think that will work well for you, I say go for it. But under the condition that if you start slipping up, if you start falling off track or not sticking to things exactly as according to the way that you planned or had in mind, that you don't let yourself slip into all these stories of not being capable or feeling like you can't do it, or get into this all or nothing place where because you're not doing it perfectly, you just stop doing it. You can go for bigger changes, but if you hit a point where you're not really sticking with it, use it as a learning opportunity. Paying attention to what's working well for you, what's not, and then making some adjustments. This last tip is very much so just from my own personal experience, but I think that raising your standards can make such a difference. Now, obviously, we're all motivated by different things. So maybe what I value and what motivates me may be a lot different than what is the case for you. But something that I noticed really helped me when I actually started sticking with eating healthier was to view it as a way of raising my standards, of getting to a place where I was like, you know what, I only want to put really high quality food in my body. And I say only, I definitely don't do that like 100%. I still have things that maybe aren't the highest quality food, but a majority of what I eat is very high quality food. And that's just a standard that I've set for how I want to take care of myself. I really think it is such a useful way to help cultivate a better relationship with ourselves because we are saying, hey, I love you, I want to take care of you, and I am showing you respect by putting really high quality food to nourish you. And kind of piggybacking off of that, the most important thing if you are looking to change how you eat is changing your mindset, because how we think about something directly affects what we do. So if right now you see eating healthy in any kind of negative light, the odds of you sticking with it are much lower. So we want to look at, are you thinking about eating healthy from a negative place? From a place of not feeling good enough, or as something that you feel like you should do, that you have to force yourself to do? If so, you can reframe it to come from a more positive place. You're doing this for you. You're doing this to help you feel good. You're doing this as a way to show up for yourself. We also want to look at how you think about healthy food. Do you see it as restrictive, as disciplined, as boring, as bland? And if so, see if you can look at healthy food through a different lens, seeing it as something that is maybe really delicious, something that you do enjoy, something that can be fun. And I definitely don't think this is necessary, but something that really helped me was learning more about nutrition and health. And that just really helped me change my perspectives, and it made healthy eating just so much more appealing for me initially. And the last perspective I want you to look at is your identity, because your current identity is of the version of you who has the eating patterns that you have now. Start to see yourself as someone who eats healthier, as someone who likes to eat healthier, maybe as someone who actually cooks at home more, or as someone who does put in the extra effort to plan out their meals for the week. Start to see yourself as the type of person who has these types of habits that you want to have around eating. I promise you it makes such a difference. I would love to know which of these tips you found to be the most helpful for you, so go ahead and just let me know in the comments below. I would love to read those. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a like button. If you want to join this community, definitely hit the subscribe button or join my weekly newsletter. But thanks so much for watching until the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.